Thank you for stopping by at the Movie Marquee. Our podcast reviews well-known movies and contains spoilers. The podcast may contain mature subject matter and mature language. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy the show.
Quiet on set. Places, everybody. And action.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Movie Marquee. Today we'll be reviewing the 1994 release Maverick. I'm your host, Eric. Lord, whatever I've done to piss you off, if you could just get me out of this and somehow let me know what it was, and I promise I'll rectify the situation. And of course, Ted.
Hey Eric, do you know Ken? You've probably never heard of him. I know what you're thinking. He's old, decrepit, gums his food and his women, but he can still shoot straight.
Let's hope so. And of course, we have the aforementioned Ken.
Hey Eric, do you know Ted? When he was born, he came out backwards and no one noticed. Hell, when he was little, his parents had to tie a pork chop around his neck so the dog would play with him. When he's making love, he has to pretend he's somebody else.
We need a rim shot here, a little drum snare for that one. Well played. Well played indeed. What do you got, Ted?
Maverick was released on May 20th, 1994. It's directed by Richard Donner. It's written by William Goldman. It's scored by Randy Newman. It comes in at a running time of 127 minutes. It had a budget of $75 million, and it had a box office gross of $183 million. So I think it got the Memorial Day bump as far as its release.
I don't think we've done a movie that's had a budget that high yet.
It's one of our biggest.
75 mil, that's a big budget for 94.
Yeah, it is. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 66% on the tomato meter
So
and a
fresh.
71% audience score. Maverick stars Mel Gibson as Brett Maverick, Jodie Foster as Annabelle Bransford, James Garner as Zane Cooper, Graham Greene as Joseph, Alfred Molina as Angel, and James Coburn as Commodore Duval.
Thanks, Ted. What did the critics have to say about this movie?
The critics were mostly positive. Our friend Gene Siskel from the Chicago Tribune gave it a positive review. And he said that Maverick succeeds just barely on the goodwill of its stars and the sumptuousness of its Western locations. Our friend Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times gave it 3 stars. The screenplay is by William Goldman, who wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid for Paul Newman and Robert Redford. But Maverick's spirit owns more to the next Newman and Redford collaboration, The Sting. You know, I don't disagree with Roger Ebert very often, but the fact that he brings up The Sting in comparison to this movie is a little out there.
I'm assuming Ebert liked The Sting.
I would hope
assume so. I would hope so. Sure.
I would
sure.
hope so. I would
I would
so.
agree it is a pretty strong comparison, but it does have some similarities in the writing and kind of the buddy-esque film noir of it.
I did catch the YouTube Siskel and Ebert at the movies. They gave Maverick a thumbs up. They liked the cinematography, the characters, and the chase scene, but both felt it overstayed its welcome by just a little bit. Lisa Schwartzman from Entertainment Weekly, she gave it a B-. Karen James, somebody I've never heard of from the New York Times, she did give it a positive review. But then there's Peter Rayner of the Los Angeles Times. I'm going to give you just a handful of his quotes out of his review. This is very negative. He says, Maverick is smart alecky without being very smart. It's full of spoofy, har-de-har-har ribaldries. This film practically winks as you. It's as sophisticated as Western comedies go. It's somewhere between Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Ample Dumpling Gang. Gibson tumbles and scampers and issues double and triple takes to everything from riverboat gamblers to rattlesnakes. He's ingratiatingly and finally exhaustingly goofy. He seems to be simultaneously impersonating the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. The tiredness of the jokes in Maverick is supposed to be terminally hip. We're supposed to enjoy our familiarity with all of the cliches. For people who enjoy having their junk memories jogged and coddled, this kitty connoisseurship can pass for a good time. He liked the movie, I think.
Apparently. Wow.
I like both Butch Cassidy and the Apple Dumpling Gang, so I don't see where the problem is.
Explains why we're doing this movie.
Okay. Well, any more reviews?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. Overall, they're mostly good. I thought that some of those lines from Peter Rayner, he was pretty funny.
Well, Ken, tell us the plot of this movie.
Maverick. Gambler Brett Maverick is on his way to a major poker tournament. Maverick wants to prove he is the best card player of his time. Short $3,000 of the $25,000 tournament entry fee, Maverick travels around the area, intending to collect on debts and win money at card games to reach the $25,000 entry fee. At a poker game, he encounters an ill-tempered gambler, Angel, and a con artist, Annabelle Bransford. After losing for an hour, as he promises to do, he wins a massive pot from Angel. Angel is ready to fight Maverick, but Maverick stages a fake fight with some locals to make him look like he's a great fighter, and makes Angel think twice about fighting Maverick. Maverick and Bransford share a stagecoach with Marshal Zane Cooper, and together the three set out of Crystal River, narrowly escaping falling into a ravine to their deaths when their elderly coachman suddenly dies, and later aiding missionary settlers who have been waylaid by bandits disguised as Indians. The settlers offer Maverick a percentage of the recovered money they desperately need to start their mission. While one spinster missionary suggests marriage to Cooper, but both men turn down their offers. The trio and the settlers are then suddenly cornered by a large band of real Indians led by Joseph. His companions are unaware that Joseph and Maverick are good friends. Maverick sacrifices himself to allow his companions to escape. Joseph owes $1,000 to Maverick. They swindle that amount from a Russian archduke with a scheme that allows him to hunt and kill an Indian, which is Maverick in disguise. Angel, still seething that Maverick bluffed him at their previous poker game, receives a telegraph instructing him to stop Maverick. Angel and his mercenaries catch up to Maverick, but are unable to find his money and leave him for dead, but Maverick escapes. He recovers his $23,000 hidden in his boot and makes his way to the poker tournament. He reunites with Bransford and Cooper, and Bransford is still short $4,000 herself. Spying the Archduke, Maverick poses as the Bureau of Indian Affairs and investigates the shooting of Indians for game, conning the Archduke out of $6,000 to cover his and Bransford's entry fee. Commodore Duval welcomes the 20 competitors to the tournament, with Cooper overseeing the security of the game and the prize money, and watching for any cheater, who are thrown overboard if they are discovered to be cheating. Eventually, only 4 players are left: Maverick, Bransford, Angel, and the Commodore. During the break before the final round, Maverick and Bransford have a sexual thing in their quarters. After Bransford leaves, Maverick finds he has been locked in his room in an attempt to make him forfeit, but manages to climb outside the steamer to make to the game in time. Bransford is eliminated early, and as the match comes down to Maverick and Angel, Maverick notices that the dealer is dealing from the bottom of the deck. He calls this out, and with Angel and the Commodore all in with strong hands, Maverick is able to pull one card to complete his royal flush, which Ted enjoys very much. Angel and his men try to shoot and kill Maverick, but Cooper and Maverick shoot first, killing them. During the closing ceremony to give Maverick his winnings of $500,000, Cooper says he will keep the money for himself and escapes. Later that night, Cooper secretly meets with the Commodore, revealing that the two had struck a deal to steal the money for themselves, and that Angel was working with the Commodore. The Commodore draws a gun and breaks his crooked deal with Cooper, when Maverick appears, having tracked him down, and takes back his prize money. Sometime later, Maverick is relaxing in a hot bath when Cooper finds him, revealing that Maverick is Cooper's son.
Dun, dun, dun. Spoiler alert.
And the two had planned this windfall long in advance. As both men enjoys the bath, Bransford arrives, having solved that they were both father and son, and walks away with a bag containing the prize money. After she leaves, Maverick reveals to Cooper that he allowed Bransford to take the money uncontested, since he took Cooper's advice and kept half the prize money in his boots. Maverick admits it will be fun retrieving the rest of the funds. The end.
And so we have the movie Maverick. Thank you, Ken, for that descriptive plot summary. So
I'm still
let's talk
curious
about
the sexual thing that they had.
the sexual thing. That could be anything.
All right, I already talked to you about the birds and the bees, Ted. I'm going to have Eric talk to you offline about the birds and the bees again.
Well, I know about the birds and the bees. You said that they had a sexual thing. I'm just curious as to what kind of
from
thing
what I
they had.
understand, birds and bees don't like each other.
Right?
So
That's what I thought too.
we could talk about cross pollinization, but no one would get that joke.
I get that joke.
Only a few inside people would get that joke. But let's talk about the first time you guys saw this movie. I'll kick it off here. This is actually a movie I saw in the theater when it opened, at least that week or 2 weeks or something. But I saw it first run in the theater. This is a big Mel Gibson fan, Jodie Foster. And in the mid 90s, I was a big country music fan. And as we know, this soundtrack is loaded with the who's who of 90s country. Saw it in the theater, and I actually really, really enjoyed it. What about you, Ted?
This isn't the first time I saw it. Very similar to you. I didn't see it in the movie theater, though. It would have been on video. This would have been something that we would have watched as a family. All of my family really likes country music as well. That would have been a major attraction for the movie because of all of the people that were involved with it. And of course, my dad and mom grew up in the time where Maverick was on TV along with Gunsmoke and Bonanza and all of those TV shows. They would have known what Maverick was and they would have wanted to see this. So to this day, my dad still watches Gunsmoke and Bonanza on MeTV. He really likes all of that stuff. I'm sure he would have been a fan of the TV show as well.
How about you, Ken? What's your story?
Saw this in the theater, was a big Mel Gibson fan, loved the Lethal Weapon movies, and also was a kind of a big fan of the Western movie genre that was thing in the late 80s. You had like movies like Silverado and Pale Rider. And so the combination of Westerns and comedy along with Mel Gibson really attracted me to go see this. I really enjoyed it. And when it came on video, it was like one of those movies that I've before that it's kind of like in a rotation that I watched over and over and over again. So it's still a movie to this day that if it comes on in the middle of it, I'll start watching it.
That's interesting because I'll be honest, I haven't seen this movie probably since early to mid 2000s. Probably saw it on video after I saw it in the theater, but I haven't seen it since. So it was really kind of cool to sit down and watch it a couple times. And here we are talking about it. Let's talk about this cast here. Ted, I know you're really big into this cast. What are you thinking?
We'll start by saying there's a couple of things about the main characters. I really couldn't ask for much more. Mel Gibson is still, he's a great actor, and I enjoy a lot of what he does. I think he's cast really good here. Like Kenneth said, I think he played very well off of the Lethal Weapon type of character. He was able to pull the tongue-in-cheek, jokey part of it off real well. I think you see a lot of that in this role.
I'm sure
And
Richard
James
Donner had something to help with that, being the director of
Oh,
Lethal
yes.
Weapon. Sure.
Oh, yes.
And we'll talk
Yeah.
about that later in the podcast.
It's a different role for Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster was coming off a couple of really serious roles. She was in Summersby, and then, of course, she had the role of Clarice Starling in the epic Silence of the Lambs. So this was a real different role for her. She does very well because I think she's an extremely accomplished actress. But I have a hard time getting her other roles out of my mind when I see her in this role. And James Garner's cool, along with James Coburn, of course. I loved him and James Garner in The Great Escape. James Coburn always seems to play that character, plays a good and bad guy really well. I think he plays the Commodore really well here. And Alfred Molina, interestingly enough, he got his first role as Indiana Jones's sidekick at the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it's interesting to see him in 1994 here before he really took off. His big takeoff moment would have been as Dr. Octopus in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. He's always plays a good bad guy.
You know, it's kind of funny, Ted, that you bring up Jodie Foster in some of her roles. I'm just going through her IMDb. She really doesn't have any comedic roles besides this in her life. Okay, Freaky Friday might be as comedic as you get from when she was like 12. But I mean, in
Right.
88, she did The Accused, which I think she was nominated for the Academy Award for that. In 88, extremely serious, Silence of the Lambs, Summersby. Same year, she did Nell in
Yeah.
94.
Yeah.
Contact, we're going to the Panic Room, Flight Plan, etc. The funny thing she did reunite in 2011 for The Beaver with Mel Gibson. Yeah.
That was part of the Mel Gibson redemption tour.
Yeah, a
But-
little bit of a dark comedy, if you will, if you want to
Mhm.
call it a comedy. But
She
yeah.
directed that vehicle.
Oh, did
too,
she?
I think.
Okay.
Interesting thing about Jodie Foster and The Contact, she was offered the part in Conspiracy Theory because her and Mel Gibson actually got along extremely well on this film. They're friends, and that's why she casted him in that movie, The Beaver. So she could have been his love interest again in Conspiracy Theory, but it didn't happen because she chose Contact instead.
And of course, Taxi Driver. How could I forget Taxi Driver? Probably one of her most famous roles.
She was so good in that it caused John Hinckley to shoot the president.
Exactly. Good point. Well played. Yes.
I love James Garner. I'm a fan of the TV show, which James Garner and Jack Kelly, they played brothers, and they kind of switched off One week it was Jack, one week it was James Garner. So they would go back and forth, and then James Garner quit because of contract negotiations and was replaced by Roger Moore. It didn't like full out replace him. He played a cousin of the Mavericks. That was kind of odd, but we also had like guest stars like Clint Eastwood would be in there from time to time. It's a very interesting TV show. They do a great job of throwing in little bits and pieces here and there of the TV show in the movie. And I think Mel Gibson does a really good job of portraying kind of like a James Garner type of character in Maverick. So, and Jodie Foster has never been more, I think, enchanting. She's silly, but at the same time, she has this elegance. And I don't even know how to say it, but she's just perfect for the role. I really don't see anybody else doing as well as she did. And then you also have the supporting cast and all these cameos. Ted's got a list of cameos for you guys from A to Z. I mean, but this is a great cast. I won't spoil the cameos because I want Ted to enjoy that one, but it's very impressive.
One of the people that I forgot to even mention is actually probably my favorite character in the entire movie is Graham Greene as Joseph.
Totally agree.
And this is a real movement away from his role in Dances with Wolves. He was probably one of the major reasons that Dances with Wolves succeeded.
And he flips it here. He flips it.
Totally
completely flips it. But he does it in a way that's very funny.
It's very lighthearted. It's not offensive to Indians. It's not offensive to Indian culture. It's almost like saying how stupid, if you will, the white man is. And in this era of the 1880s, that we can just kind of dupe them, like a Russian guy who's just traveling through.
It's a thumb to the nose to the Hollywood version of what an Indian is.
It is.
This movie has more cameos, I think, than any other movie that we've done. One of the biggest cameos that everybody talks about, of course, is Danny Glover. He's one of the robbers of the bank, which I could have done without.
Do you mean the scene or Danny Glover acting as the...
Danny Glover as the robber. They play it off like they kind of know each other, and it just...
Oh, come on. One of my favorite lines in the movie is that I'm getting too old for this shit. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but it's a favorite line from another movie.
But it's funny that it's played in it. I like that.
It's not taking itself seriously.
Exactly.
It's taking a serious moment, a bank robbery, and it's having fun with it.
I thought that was very good.
Danny Glover falls into the cameo category
yes, he does.
Richard Donner acolyte type.
Yes.
And then another one in that group of Donner people is Steve Cahan. He plays one of the dealers at the gambling boat.
He gets his butt stuck on the chair. If you ever watch the movie, he can't get out of the chair. It's stuck to his butt.
And tell people who he is famous for, maybe on some of these cameos.
He played the chief of police over Murtaugh and Riggs in Lethal Weapon. This is another segment of cameos, which are country music stars. You had Carlene Carter. She's a waitress on the riverboat. She's the daughter of June Carter Cash. You had Hal Ketchum, who is another country music star. He was one of the bank robbers, along with Danny Glover. He's a country singer. And then Vince Gill and his then current wife were spectators at the poker game. And of course, Clint Black, he plays the first gambler who gets thrown off the boat for cheating. He's a country music star. And then Waylon Jennings and Kathy Mattea, both country music stars. They're the people with the guns that get thrown off of the riverboat.
Which he blames on his wife. He's like, oh, I'm holding her gun. Yeah.
And then there's another section of cameos of famous TV Western stars. Leo Gordon, he plays one of the players at the first card scene. He wrote 4 episodes of the original Maverick. He made 5 guest appearances as Big Mike McComb. And then you have Denver Pyle. He plays a poker player. And of course, he's most famous for the Dukes of Hazzard. He played Uncle Jesse.
As I'm thumbing through this live here, I see it noted on IMDb that one of the bank robbers is also Corey Feldman.
Well, I'm getting...
Damn it, I'm sorry, I robbed his thunder.
He goes under the Donner acolyte
I'm
cameo.
sorry, I'm going to keep my mouth shut and let you roll.
Nope, that's okay. Along with Corey Feldman, another Richard Donner person is Margot Kidder. She plays one of the Christian missionaries. And of course, she was an actress in Superman.
Lois Lane.
And then
She looked kind of scary though in that. I don't know if that was done on purpose or she had taken so many drugs at that particular point that's
yeah, I
really
don't.
how she
Yeah,
looked.
it was. She looked bad.
Yeah.
And then back to the TV Western cameos. William Smith, he was an actor in the TV show Laredo. Doug McClure, he was one of the poker players. He was in The Virginian. People our age might remember him from a TV show in the early 90s called Out of This World. A very small TV show. A lot of people might not know it. And then there's another country music star, James Drury. He's one of the poker players. He was an actor in The Virginian. Robert Fuller, he was a poker player. He played in The Virginian.
And Emergency, one of my favorite 70s medical dramas.
And then William Smith, he was one of the poker players. He was in Laredo. Henry Darrow was a poker player, and he played in The High Chaparral. Robert Fuller also, he was part of the TV show Wagon Train. Paul Brinegar, he was the stagecoach driver who dies. He was an actor in the TV show Rawhide. We also have Dennis Fimple. He was a poker player. He was in various TV westerns and movie westerns as well. If you're a modern day horror movie fan, one of his last roles was in House of a Thousand Corpses by Rob Zombie. And then you have Dan Hedaya. He plays a poker player. He played in Blood Simple. And Art LaFleur. He's a poker player from the beginning of the movie. He was in Field of Dreams. He played Chick Gandil. And this is one of the more interesting ones. William Marshall. He plays one of the poker players. His famous role is he was Blackula. That's awesome.
The
And then,
black
of course,
exploitation movies of the 70s.
and then Michael Paul Chan, he was one of the poker players. As a throwback to our Goonies episode, he played Data's dad. Then you have more country music stars or singers. Alice Cooper had a cameo that was cut. He played a town drunk. Reba McEntire, she's an extra at the opening poker scene. She's a country music star. Restless Heart, the group, they are the background band on the riverboat. And then one final cameo was Vilmos Zsigmond. He plays the landscape painter Albert Beardstam, and he's the film's choreographer.
I'm throwing one more in. It's
Oh, I
referenced.
missed one.
John Fogerty.
John Fogerty. I
John
never even
Fogerty
seen.
as a street spectator, uncredited.
Interesting.
Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
That's right. What a cast of extras.
It's literally a who's who. And I do like Doug McClure quite a bit. I think he's a really good actor. A lot of the country music stars lent their music to the movie.
It was a top-selling
I can-
soundtrack, clearly.
Kind of see how they fit. And after that, it's like Richard Donner went and tried to. Everything had to be a shout out and a throwback to a person from the past. Don't get me wrong, it's fine. Some of my favorite directors do the same thing, but it's like every single actor has to be a throwback to something. They can't just let a part be a part.
Is that why the budget's $75 million?
It has. I mean, it almost has to be. They basically recast the entire TV show, The Virginian. I understand that this movie draws a lot from that era.
I think you're just overthinking this part altogether. I mean, what's wrong with having all these cameos? It doesn't take away in the movie. It's not even blatant in a lot of cases.
And let's be
It's
honest,
very-
half the people watching it have no idea who half those people
Half
are.
these people are,
But
yeah.
yes, but for somebody like me who has watched a lot of movies, it gets annoying because it's like every one of these guys I go, I know who that is. Who's that? Pause the movie, go to IMDb and look up the person. Oh yeah, that's where I know him from. Continue the movie.
Most people are not going to do that. Most people are going just to watch the film. You're different in that sense. And I'm going to do that after the film is over because I'm going to watch the film. But like Corey Feldman is so brief in it that if you blink, you're going to miss him. A lot of these cameos are very blink and you miss him type of cameos. You don't seem to have a problem with Kevin Smith doing it when Kevin Smith throws all these cameos.
What did I just tell you? Some of my favorite directors do the same thing.
Do you have a problem when it's that way?
When it's constant and every scene has somebody, then the whole thing is populated by that guy actors. The worst cameo, in my opinion, is the Danny Glover thing. It's just ridiculous.
And
Well,
I
that
think
one's the
that's
most
one of the
blatant.
best ones.
I couldn't stand it.
The reason why I like that cameo is, number one, let's look at this movie from the point of view of a person who is 15, 20 years old watching this movie in the theater. Most likely, they have seen Lethal Weapon. They know who Danny Glover is. They know the
Right.
movie. That cameo is a little bit of an homage, and it gets people talking about them. Hey, Danny Glover's got a cameo. Hey, it's an homage to,
Right.
it gets people talking. It's recent. Most 15, 20-year-olds are not going to know the cast of The Virginian has extras in
Right.
this movie. Before you brought up all these extras and I researched it, I didn't even know 80% of these extras were in there. That's me.
Yeah.
But I'm not real big into westerns of the 60s and 70s. Picked out a few people for other, like Robert Fuller. I know him from Emergency, not from
Hmm.
whatever western show you mentioned. But most of these, I'm just watching this movie. I don't even know half these people, and I'm just kind of moving forward.
I
I think the
understand that.
extras actually help because you're talking about it. Your parents watching this movie, first run in 94, are probably recognizing some of these people going, hey, I think that's
Right.
such and such.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
But I think what you're saying is it overkill? Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
It's a little bit.
I think if they used extras, like if they used people like Danny Glover, Corey Feldman, people that were very, very recognizable from that era, from the 80s and 90s, and
Mhm.
your people are picking them out left and right because they're in the news constantly. They got movies
Right.
coming out the year before, they got movies coming up the year after, and you're sitting there going, why are there so many celebrity cameos in this movie? But I think the average viewer is not going to realize that there are so many celebrity cameos in it. But I like the fact that you kind of went through and just named all these people. And I think it's really cool that Donner did that.
Just to belabor one point and leave it, I think part of the Danny Glover thing that got me was not only did they do it, he had to say one line from Lethal Weapon, and then they had Randy Newman do a musical thing right from Lethal
Oh,
Weapon.
don't get me started
Just
on
to
Randy Newman.
just to hammer the fact home, here's Danny Glover. Also, with Richard Donner, what kind of made it shocking for me is he's not known to do this, where he starts getting his buddies, people that he's worked with, back into the movie.
Right.
In our other movies that we've seen,
Or any
now the
other
Omen,
Richard Donner movie. So I'm curious to what started this train a rolling, if you will.
it has to be either the studio or it has to be his decision. And his decision to bring his people back in, like Margot Kidder and Corey Feldman, that has to be his decision. Like I said, The Omen was one of his first movies, so we can't really base it off that.
Wait, Little
He's not-
Damien wasn't in this movie? I thought
Are
Little
you
Damien was in this
sure?
movie.
Are we
He's
sure Joe
not- he-
Pesci wasn't hanging around somewhere?
He's not known to do this. Like when Ken brought up disparagingly, because he thinks that he has to pick on Kevin Smith
Yes.
in every single one of our episodes.
That is a theme with you, Ken. I've noticed that.
I don't know why he hates him so much, but anyway,
I like Kevin Smith.
that's one of his things. When you see one of his movies, you know you're going to see some of quote unquote his actors. You know that they're going to pop up.
You'll be disappointed if you don't
all
see
over the
them,
movie.
actually.
Exactly.
You count on it.
And it just seemed out of place. I don't know. Sticking all the country music stars too, it just seemed like really heavy handed. And I have a personal beef with Clint Black. I don't care for him. That he gets that part.
Okay, I think the Fun Police has just came out here and is tying Richard Donner up in cuffs, beating him out back. But it's a fun movie. He's just having a good time with it. And I know why they do the Danny Glover thing. It's because it's Mel Gibson. It's a Mel Gibson movie. He's on top and it's a comedy. And it's going to be fun to throw Danny Glover in there because everybody here is coming to see this movie because it's Mel Gibson.
So was Danny Glover in Braveheart?
That's not comedy, though. Well, why are you comparing a comedy to an epic, drama
you say
like that?
That Danny Glover has to appear in every Mel Gibson movie.
I never said he had to appear in every Mel Gibson. This is a comedy, and everybody's coming to see it because it's Mel Gibson, and they're going to have fun with it.
Danny Glover didn't appear in Bird on a Wire.
First of all, Bird on the Wire came out before Mel Gibson, and Lethal Weapon series was very popular. And Bird on a Wire is a horrid movie, and it's not done by Richard Donner.
Just saying.
I'm just saying. Give the guy a break. Let him have some fun.
That's fine. It was distracting, and like I said, maybe it's because I just didn't care for things.
When I saw it in the theater for the first time, I had a big smile on my face. I thought it was hilarious. Does it fit? No, of course it doesn't fit. Does it stop the movie in its tracks? Sure it does. But is it fun? Yes. And this is what this movie is. This movie is not to be taken seriously. first and foremost, it's a comedy Western. And I think they do a great job of mixing both. There's so much more here. And we talked about all these cameos, but we haven't even touched on performances from, like, let's say, Alfred Molina as Angel. He brings a really good bad guy here to the situation. And he's an incredible actor. He's played lots of different things. Yeah, he was Dr. Ock in the Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. He's an incredible actor, and I think he brings some legitimacy here to this bad guy role, where it easily been just a cartoonish bad guy. It's not a cartoonish bad guy.
I think it is a little bit of a cartoonish bad guy.
I don't know.
A little bit over the top.
Yeah,
I might be a little bit over the top. The movie is a little bit over the top, but I think he pulls it.
This movie doesn't take itself very seriously. Therefore, you can't have an over the top evil bad guy. I think for the way this movie takes it, he's a perfect bad guy.
When he delivers his bad guy lines, he
guess.
does deliver it very well. When he's hanging him from his horse, and he goes, "I was almost hanged once and didn't like it much." It was a really good line. There wasn't over cheese.
I know you couldn't kill Maverick then. That'd be the end of the movie. But it did seem a little cartoonish about how he was hanging him, to be honest with you.
Maybe so, but the way he delivers his lines are not
it was good. No, he was good in it. I agree.
Well, it has to be that whole idea of setting him up to be hung like that. And so I think this is part of what really gets on my nerves with the movie, too. That is so 1960s Batman, where the bad guy has Batman in a position where something bad's going to happen to him.
Or 60s Bond.
And Batman could
Bond.
die.
I expect you to die.
And then all of a sudden, the voice comes on. Tune in next week to see if Batman survives. Same bat time, same bat channel. It's so over the top. And like you said, Eric, it's a Bond thing too.
It is.
And it's so bad now that it's become a joke. Even that Austin Powers completely just blew out of the water. Instead of just shooting the guy, you have to provide some half-baked, stupid position you're going to put him in to die.
How serious do you want your comedy to get, though, Ted? And then on top of that, this
movie takes itself a little bit seriously at times. That's where I start to have a problem. If you're going to do a comedy,
when do you think it takes itself seriously?
This comes off not as a movie. It comes off as a fan fiction of a 1960s movie that probably should have been a TV movie.
Well, this is a 1960s TV show, which was a comedy Western TV show. This is playing off of what that TV show did. I mean, we've seen other movies take a TV show and then try to reinvent it and make it more serious or put it out of place. We talked offline about Masters of the Universe and that cartoon and how they took that and made it into a movie, but then put them into the 20th century and Earth, and how stupid that was as an idea. This really tries to take the original TV series and pay homage to that TV series by being true to it. I think it does an extremely great job. And of course, I love Maverick, the TV show. And I did not see the TV show before I seen this movie. I saw the movie first, and then I saw the TV show. Well, actually, after I seen this movie, I started becoming a fan of James Garner Westerns like Support Your Local Sheriff, Support Your Local Gunfighter. Those movies were very Maverick-esque. It made me want more James Garner in that type of role. And so I started watching this TV show, and I was hooked. And I look at this movie and I say bravo to Donner for keeping the Maverick-esque alive in this movie, because he does a great job of honoring that TV show.
You are right. It is very much like, and I'm not a real fan of your 60s Westerns TV shows, but this movie does pay homage to it and does keep the spirit of Maverick alive.
If I want to watch a comedy that's a Western, I'll just watch Blazing Saddles and be extremely happy and entertained. At least Blazing Saddles has intelligent comedy. Outside of the Graham Greene's Indian, as far as Joseph, everything that's really around this movie is kind of ridiculous.
Well, how would you compare this to other Western style movies, comedies of the past? The one that comes to my mind is, which I just saw recently and I didn't really care for it, Jack Nicholson's Going South, which had a large cast of celebrities in it for the time.
Well, there's another movie called Rustler's Rhapsody with Tom Berenger.
I've never even heard of that movie.
I have.
And I like Tom Berenger.
A lot of cameos in that movie too.
I don't care for the 60s TV Westerns. I guess I like my Westerns in a certain way. I don't care for schlock.
You want the spaghetti Western.
Yeah, I want Clint Eastwood.
What is that, Sergio Leone as director?
Sergio Leone. Yeah. I want Peckinpah. I want The Wild Bunch. I want The Unforgiven, another Clint Eastwood movie. I guess I like it more on the serious
Like
side.
the Magnificent Seven?
The
Both
Magnificent
of them?
Seven's really
Both of
good.
them? Even the remake?
Yeah, even the remake I do even kind of like.
What about Silverado? Because Silverado is like mid-80s. It's not a comedy, but it has
It's campy.
lighthearted moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I don't care for that. It's part of the reason why I don't like John Wayne.
We know
It's-
your hatred of John Wayne.
I like John Wayne in True Grit because it's more of a serious type of role. I like it. Was it The Cowboys where
Yeah.
he plays with Bruce Dern?
hmm
I thought that was pretty serious. But you look at some of the schlock that he put out as far as what counts as a Western, it's ridiculousness. I can't get into it. Because here's the thing, nobody is ever in jeopardy. You know they're not going to kill John Wayne. John Wayne made the Alamo, and they didn't even show him getting shot as Davy Crockett. It doesn't do anything for me. Where they do try to take it themselves seriously, take the John Wesley Hardin character. At the beginning of the movie, when Maverick sits down at the table, the guy introduces himself as John Hardin.
He knows who he is.
He knows who he is. Okay, don't bring real life into your fictional universe. Your fictional universe works fine on its own. Don't bring John Wesley Hardin in and then try to play it off as a joke. John Wesley Hardin was a murderer. He was a straight up psychopath. And he was wanted in many of the Western states when he was alive. He was a gunfighter. It's like all of a sudden Maverick runs into Billy the Kid or Jesse James.
But this is not that type of movie. You must have a problem with Forrest Gump because how they put all real life stuff into Forrest Gump's life. It's a comedy. It's supposed to have fun. I guess I understand a little bit what you say about putting a real character in there. Actually, it's one of my favorite scenes where he actually shows how fast he really is.
I couldn't stand it.
I loved it. And it was perfect Maverick from the TV show because he was a quick draw. He was also somebody that didn't want to fight when he didn't have to fight. But if he did have to fight, he could hold his own.
If Maverick would have run into John Wesley Hardin in real life, John Wesley Hardin would have put him 6 feet under. He would have shot him dead.
Maverick is a fictional character, though. This is...
Then don't put a real life murderer in your movie and play it off as a joke.
Don't put a fake couple on the Titanic and make a film of that either.
I never said that I cared for that.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this is a movie and it's a comedy. We're not supposed to take it seriously. I think you're taking it way too seriously for a comedy.
So if Maverick ran into Billy the Kid and they played it off as a joke, that would be okay too.
If it's a comedy, yes. I think it's done well here. What do you think, Eric? Do you think it's done well?
Yeah, I'll be honest. It didn't really bug me. I do see where Ted is coming from, that John Wesley Hardin was a gunslinger, a killer. He was a pretty bad hombre, if you will. And I don't think a John Wesley Hardin character would have put up for any of the antics that Maverick was doing at that table for longer than a minute or two before he just blew his head off. But in the Maverick realm, I guess I don't give people the benefit of the doubt of actually knowing history, but I don't think most of the people know who John Wesley Hardin is, to be honest with you, Ted. To them, it could be a made-up name, or maybe they've heard the name, but they really don't know the back history on this guy. Didn't really bug me, to be honest.
And you're probably right, and that's probably why they chose somebody who wasn't
a household name.
Infamous like Billy the Kid or Jesse James.
I'll be honest, I remember the name John Wesley Hardin from the 1980s when Time Life had their series, The Gunslingers, those books.
Oh, I remember those.
Right. And they're like, John Wesley Hardin shot a man in the back just for snoring too loud. I just remember that line from that. That's my connection to John Wesley Hardin. But I know a little bit about his history. And you're right. It doesn't fit into the Maverick universe where everyone else is hee-hawing and no one's really getting killed.
There's a lot of times where we see these characters pop up in movies and sometimes in comedies where it's not done right. And I think here it's done well enough. And like Eric said, I don't think a lot of people know who he is. And it's such a minor part of the movie. It's only done for a few minutes. If it was drawn out throughout the whole movie, then I might have a bigger problem with it. But just because it's just a few minutes, just to show that Maverick can hold his own, I don't really have a big problem. And I love this scene here at the poker table where he's reading all these people for the first hour, looking at all their tells and stuff. The tells are a little stupid, to be perfectly honest with you.
Bit, yes.
When I play poker, I don't see people like
looking at their... It's another over the top.
Angel Virgil licking his lip. I've never seen a guy that licks his lips when he plays poker. But if he could see like eye twitches, he says later holding breath, those type of things are good. But I think because it's a comedy and because Mel Gibson is so engaging in this film, all the stuff for me at least is thrown out the window as far as legitimacy because the performances of Mel Gibson, Jodie Foster, and I talked about Jodie Foster earlier. She's elegant, she's sexy, she does everything right in this film to be a believable con artist. She's great. I've never enjoyed her. And I shouldn't say I've never enjoyed her more because I love her in Silence of the Lambs. I mean, she did a great job. And The Accused. I like those movies a lot. But this is a side of her we barely get to see. I was just amazed by it. I wish we would have had more of these type of movies with Jodie Foster.
Would you have wanted a Maverick sequel?
I know they would have been going to search for her because she had taken half the money, but I think it ended the right way. The thing is I've never found Jodie Foster to be attractive. And that's not saying that she isn't attractive. We all have different tastes in women. In this particular case, I was attracted to her in this movie. And I think it's because of her character. She just does a really fabulous job. Like I said, all the characters here, I think, are up to the challenge and having some fun. In fact, I would probably say the one that probably is kind of missed out is James Coburn. He really doesn't do much here for me. He almost seems like an extra to it a certain extent, just because he isn't given anything much to do here. I think he's buried with the other leads. I think the other leads have more time to shine. Maybe at the end there where him and Coop are battling, for the gun. Outside of that, it's really just dull. That's probably one of the things I was a little disappointed in was the fact they were building up who's trying to stop Maverick from getting to the game. When they got to the boat, you could see right away who was trying to stop him because the Commodore kept on looking at Angel and kept on looking back and forth. And then all of a sudden they surprise you. There's no surprise. Kind of ruined that surprise. That was a little disappointing.
There are things that I actually do like a lot about this movie. I think the way this movie is shot is really beautifully shot.
Well, for $75 million, it better be.
Right. This was shot in Utah, in one of the national parks. It's absolutely
And Butch
gorgeous.
Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was shot in Utah as well.
Yes, it was. There isn't really one, especially the vistas. And that's part of what I really like about most Westerns, is the West becomes part of the character of the movie. And I think that it does that really well, where you get these amazing vistas. And it really gives the feel that it is a Western. I thoroughly enjoy that.
I love it when Mel Gibson is saying, man, you guys know how to pick a site. He's sitting there in the Indian camp. It's beautiful around him. Trees and the water and everything around him just looks like it's the perfect place that you would like almost settle in. And I think they did a great job of creating these fake towns. And when you're on the boat, and like you said, Ted, especially when a Western is done right, the way they recreate the towns and the scenery is so authentic. It takes you back to a time that we've never experienced ourselves.
Yeah, I would agree. The cinematography on this is spectacular. It's second to none, and of course, $75 million. It better be. But the sites they use, the locations they use, very authentic. I mean, a lot of your old '60s TV show westerns were shot in Utah, Nevada, Colorado,
And Spawn Ranch.
and Spawn Ranch. There you go. It's one of my favorites. And in the Spawn Ranch especially, it's authentic, yes, but it's
It was authentic right after the time the Manson family took over.
correct.
But I mean, I even like the whole chase scene where they lose control of the stagecoach. Even though that is a very predictable trope, it's done really well here. There's a couple of points in this movie that really kind of have a feel of Indiana Jones.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
And it's this scene, and it's two different Indiana Jones movies. When the stagecoach thing is actually happening, I really get the feeling of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he goes underneath that Mercedes truck and ends up at the back holding on and being pulled. I think it's really done well here. And then there's a kind of like a nod to Last Crusade, where he's holding onto the edge of the cliff and he climbs himself back up. I don't much care for the jokey part of that, where they don't actually end up helping him get back up. It's all very well done. I think it's one of the only parts of the movie where you actually feel like there's stakes. Something could actually happen here. These characters are actually in some sort of peril. There's danger. So I think that both are done really well.
We didn't bring up about this movie in connection with Chief Joseph is the fact that everyone in the movie is trying to screw Maverick out of money they owe him, which is almost like a running gag throughout the whole movie.
Which he still does.
Which he
He,
still
you know,
does. He absolutely does.
not as bad as everybody else though. He does give him $1,000, but he got $2,000 for the
I
actual.
like the banker when the bank's getting robbed. He's got this whole wad of cash in his wallet that he turns over.
Yeah.
But he only wants to give him $100
Right.
before he gets robbed. One interesting thing about the $100 bill that he has pinned to the jacket, that is a homage to the old Maverick TV show, where actually he had a $1,000 bill pinned to the inside of his jacket.
It's fake, right?
No, it's real.
Then why did they turn on him, end up going with Alfred Molina's character?
I just think that they're stupid characters.
Because it makes no sense. He gave them 5 times what they originally wanted. I figured that was fake, and that's why he was good to get whatever change that they have, meaning that it's fake. That's the gag.
I thought not that it was fake, that he was conning them in the chain.
That's what I thought too.
But when I was
Yeah,
watching and listening
I
to
don't know.
it didn't seem like he con. But that's really not his character. His character is not to con. So these guys actually did a service for him legitimately, and he promised to pay them. I don't think he would have cheaped somebody out of that money, because I don't think that's in his character. He'll bluff you, but he won't cheat you. So I don't think he did anything wrong to those guys. I just think those guys sold him out because they just thought they pulled one over the guy. There's 4 of them, 1 of him, and they figured they could have some fun. And they were wrong, and Angel beat the crap out of them with an
And they
iron
end up
pan.
getting shot at the end, too.
Who gets?
Aren't they with Alfred
No.
Molina's character on the riverboat?
No, they're not.
Oh, okay.
Those are 2 separate guys. You had the older guy with the kind of scars around the eye, and
right.
And then you had the other guy, but neither one of those 2 were part of that 4.
Okay.
So no, they're totally different characters. It changes Ted's opinion of the movie.
Oh, drastically.
180 degrees.
Actually, I liked it better when Maverick actually gave him a fake $100 bill. I like that better.
See, this is a part though where they have to show how much of a bad guy he is, and he was able
Maverick?
to beat, well, Angel, of course, but I mean that he had to beat 4 guys by himself legitimately, whereas Maverick beat 4 guys stage. He's not going to get hurt. He's not going to get killed. There's nothing like that. But
no, there's no movie.
Still, they elevate the bad guy and show him that he is tougher than what he appeared to be. Because at first we think he's this chicken, this yellow belly himself. After watching Maverick take on 4 guys, he kind of starts getting all nervous, and Maverick says, "Do you mind if I take 6 card?" And he's like, "Oh, it's that's fine," because he's like now scared. And I didn't particularly care for that, so I liked it when they laughed at him and he came and beat the crap out of him with an iron pan. I thought that helped a lot.
And this is one of the other parts of the movie we were talking about Chief Joseph. This is one of the other parts of the movie that I actually really liked a lot too. I think as far as actually being funny, I actually laughed out loud is during Maverick's interaction with Joseph. I think that there's a few parts there that are extremely funny. The funniest part, I think,
you mean when he's doing the translation?
That's hilarious. But the funniest thing in the whole movie that actually made me laugh out loud was when they have the Russian guy. He shoots at Mel Gibson, and Mel Gibson comes back to Joseph and goes, "You thought he was going to shoot me." Their whole interaction from beginning to end is very good.
It felt like a friendship. It really did.
It was a friendship.
He tried to pull the fast one on him with the money. Where did he get all those newspaper things?
That's
it's silly, but it's still fun. The interaction is still enjoyable between the 2. He even tells Joseph, I even think my friends, even my close friends, are scamming me. And he goes, "What are friends for?" The connection was so wonderful between the 2, and the fact that they threw that message in there about how badly the Indians were treated.
He's extremely self-aware, and I think he's probably the most self-aware character in the entire movie as far as the grand scheme of things, where he fits. He knows where he fits. He knows they're being screwed, so he's going to do whatever he can to get a little bit for him and his people.
Right.
They don't play it off as sad, and he's not played as a fool. He's played as Maverick's equal in every single way, and maybe even possibly a little smarter. I think that really comes off, and I think that's the best relationship in the entire movie, even though I do kind of like the fact that Garner and Gibson, they do play the father-son thing kind of funny. I thoroughly enjoy every scene that Joseph is on the screen. I would have rather seen a whole movie of the 2 of them going playing back and forth and tricking people over any of the rest of this movie.
Well, you have this scene where he is talking to the Russian. He goes up and he starts talking, like, I think he's talking French.
He was speaking French too. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, and he starts speaking French and ticks off the Russian because he wants him to say, "How, white man." It belittles the Russian. It doesn't belittle Joseph's character. Joseph knows what he needs to do. He even says later on, he goes, "I'm going to find a swamp. You guys are not going to even want that land, so maybe you would leave us the hell alone." You're right. He's very self-aware. He realizes what he needs to do for his people. He's the perfect leader. And I love the fact that when we see them go back to the Indian camp, the first thing they're doing is they're pushing Maverick on this bike and they're laughing and having a fun time. And Maverick's like, "Why are you guys all just laughing at all this?" And he's like, "Well, nobody's ever ridden it before." It doesn't play itself seriously, but it lets you know that there's something deeper going there as far as how the Indians were truly treated.
They don't make fun of the Indian. They are definitely in on the joke, and they are playing people.
The whole movie is one play after another. It really is.
Most of them are stupid.
But it's still, whether it's stupid, the whole movie is one play, one getting up on the next person after another.
Right.
The only problem I have is I wish the character Annabelle, she looks at the Indians as these thugs are going to take stuff away from these missionaries, and she just doesn't think highly of Indians. And I wish there was a point where she sees through Maverick that the Indians are okay.
We could have seen that if we had the better movie where it was Joseph and Maverick doing their thing.
If we did have a sequel, though, as Eric asked earlier, it would have to have a lot of Joseph in it for it to be elevated to a sequel. I don't want to see a retread of the three main characters because they're perfect as they are in this movie. You need something a little bit different, and I think you take a smaller character like Joseph and you give him a bigger role in a sequel.
Do you think this show could have been made today as like a series, like a 10-part series or something like that?
Nope.
No?
It depends on what station are you putting it on, because HBO just redid Perry Mason, and extremely well done. If they're going to not play it serious, it would have to be somewhere on network TV.
I don't think it would be like this, though. I think it would be a bad knockoff of this rude and crude humor type of stuff.
Laugh tracks. You couldn't do it with laugh tracks.
Isn't the sitcom kind of dead?
Getting that way, yeah. It's getting that way.
Most of them are pretty much dead now.
Well, look at Westerns in general, though. I mean, how interested are people in Westerns? I know there was the Kevin Costner Western that's out.
Yellowstone?
Yeah, Yellowstone. I don't know how well that's doing. But then you're going to take something like that and make it into some type of comedy. I just don't think people are going to...
Well, Yellowstone's not a comedy. It's a...
No, but you're going to take something like that and make
serious.
it into a comedy.
Oh.
And I just don't think in this day and age, the Western comedy is something that would work as a series. Maybe you can get away with it as a movie again, but I just don't see it in this day and age working as a series.
It's all about the writers.
If you get the right writers, anything can work.
If you get somebody like Michael Schur, who did The Office and then Parks and Rec and The Good Place, he might be able to pull something like that off.
You're copying the TV show from the original TV show and trying to make it exactly like that. I don't think it's going to hold in this day and age. Not because it's not going to be good. It's just that I think in this day and age, there are different tastes out there now than there was, let's say, in the 50s, 60s.
Yeah, Westerns was all the rage. Westerns are a dead medium, if you will. Format, thank you. Yeah, it's just not it.
Somebody's going to come along and do something because it's sitting there waiting to be resuscitated.
Maybe.
My dad loved Kenny Rogers.
I love Kenny Rogers too.
We watched every single Gambler, even when it got bad. I even watched the last one.
I thought Bruce Boxleitner's character was always hokey. He's just a stupid idiot. No, I like the Gamblers, but I have to admit, I'm partisan to Kenny Rogers and his music.
Do you like the stuff he did when he was with the first edition?
Oh, yeah.
I was shocked. After I saw The Big Lebowski.
Oh, yeah.
And I found out that was Kenny Rogers. I called my dad and I said, "How dare you? How dare you not tell me that Kenny Rogers played rock and roll?"
Dropping acid and stuff. Come on.
My dad started to laugh. He goes, "I completely forgot that he had done it." Yeah, you never told me Kenny Rogers did rock and roll. I said he's awesome at it.
Not even rock and roll, it's psychedelic rock.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's great.
You should call him today and just tell him that again. just give him a call.
Hey, Dad, I just wanted to remind you.
My mind is literally blown.
I like the hokey stuff, like Six Pack. You ever seen Six Pack? Yeah.
It's great. with Diane.
Her first movie, Diane Lane,
Diane Lane.
Diane
yeah.
Lane.
as a
And I think
teenager.
isn't Anthony Michael Hall in that?
Yes, he
too?
is. Yep.
And I think Aaron Gray.
Aaron Gray. Yeah, you know that
Oh,
cat.
Wow.
I had
Buck
a big
Rogers.
crush on Aaron Gray in the
Silver
early
Spoons or
80s.
Buck Rogers?
Buck Rogers, Aaron Gray.
Yeah.
My 12-year-old self, one of my first on-screen crushes was Aaron Gray and Melissa Gilbert from Little House on the Prairie, which I know Ted doesn't care for.
Time out. Time out. Time out. What part of Little House on the Prairie was sexy?
Teach their own, right?
I guess it's whatever floats your boat, bro.
In my top 10 of favorite TV shows, along with Maverick, which we're talking about today.
Inside of Ken is an 11-year-old little girl.
And her name is Melissa Gilbert.
That 11-year-old little girl could still beat the crap out of you. So there you go.
Probably.
So let's talk Maverick. We were going to make some comparisons here to some possible movies, TV shows that are kind of like Maverick. Ted was bringing up the great Kenny Rogers and the Gambler series, which is kind of like Maverick.
Yeah, I can see a lot of similarities
Sure.
in that. The first one I don't think is bad at all.
Both had big soundtracks, obviously.
Yeah.
Had country western cameos.
Yes.
Ken, do you listen to both kinds of music, country and western?
Yes.
Both movies had bad poker games.
Oh, yes. And we
Cha-ching.
we so have to get into
Why don't we
the
get into the
poker.
poker games? Let's do it right now. Come on.
movies should never have card playing be something that means so much.
Preach it.
It shouldn't have that big of a part of the movie. Almost every single time it's done completely ridiculous.
Very crappy.
Rounders is probably one of the only movies that takes card playing seriously. I went through how the final hand goes down. The cards are dealt. The Commodore is dealt the 8 of clubs, the Jack of diamonds, the 8 of hearts, the 8 of diamonds, and the King of hearts. He leads out his betting at 5,000. It then moves to Angel. Angel has the 7 of clubs, the 2 of spades, the 6 of hearts, the 5 of hearts, and the 4 of hearts. He raises $5,000. Literally has nothing.
He has a straight draw and a straight flush draw. And he actually gives up 2 cards. He only needs one for the straight.
Yep, I'm getting there. And then Brett, to top it all off, of course, what does Brett get dealt? The 10, Jack, Queen, King of spades, and a 2 of diamonds. And of course, Brett calls the 10,000, which fine, because it's a TV show, he has to.
Oh, that's legitimate, though, too, though. I mean, I would probably have called that as well, because a straight flush draw, you're going to stay in.
In 5 card?
Even in 5 card, you're on a straight draw, too, and a flush draw, and a straight flush draw.
Okay. The Commodore takes 2 cards, which, of course, he would. He's going to keep his 3 of a kind. Angel takes 2 cards. Why does Angel take 2 cards? He has an open-ended straight draw on either end. But then we find out the reason why the dealer deals from the bottom of the deck. That's a whole nother conversation as to why the dealer didn't deal the best hand to the Commodore. He's already rigging the thing. Why not rig it in his favor? And of course, Brett takes 1 card in the most dramatic, over-the-top bullcrap that is on film so far. The Commodore gets his 8 to fill out his 4 of a kind. Because we know he's cheating, Angel, of course, gets his 3 of hearts and his 7 of hearts. Why he just didn't get the 7 and an 8 of hearts is neither here nor there, I guess. And he gets his straight flush. And of course, Brett is trying to resurrect the gambler, Kenny Rogers. He doesn't look at his card. But we know that there is no way in hell that that's not the ace of spades. Shout Sky Point to Lemmy. So the Commodore then moves all in for $25,000. That makes sense. He's got 4 of a kind in a 5-card draw game. Of course, Angel calls because he's cheated and he has the straight flush. And then Brett calls. He has an inside straight. He only has 1 card that's going to win him this.
That's not true. He's got 2 cards that can have him help him
He
win
wasn't going to beat a straight flush.
Yeah, because if he would have got a 9 of spades, it would also still been a royal flush.
So yes. But we know for the sake of drama, and we know it's going to be the ace. He doesn't even look at the card because you have to have that whole crazy, stupid thing where he thinks he's got magic powers over the card. So, of course, he hits the royal flush to win. We have been playing poker for over a decade. I've only seen a royal flush like maybe 2 or 3 times in real life. If you watch the movies, everybody gets a royal flush.
So a good example is Casino Royale.
That's
even
not
worse.
as egregious as Maverick, but it is.
I don't know.
I think
it might be. I think it might be because you actually have 4 players that actually have full houses, 4 of a kinds, and straight flushes.
Pretty
It's
tough.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, even for Bond, it's kind of out there.
I totally agree with you on this, Ted. When I do give my final grade, this is what's going to bring it down a notch because it is stupid. It insults the intelligence of not just poker players, but anybody who has seen a card game. They know the odds of him getting that ace are astronomical. And then, like you were saying about the Commodore getting 4 of a kind and Angel having a small straight flush, throughout the whole tournament, they're showing 4 of a kind.
Oh, yeah.
I play poker, granted it's Hold'em, and I play like 2 or 3 times a week, and it's a free league, and so I'm not really gambling, but it's still, people take it seriously, and we have a lot of fun with it.
A lot of knife fights at the table, Ken?
No knife fights at the table. Not like in Airplane when the 2 Girl Scouts go at it.
Right.
So we don't see it. The odds of making flushes and 4 of a kind are greater because you have 5 community cards that you play with. It's so much harder to get 4 of a kind and straight flushes in 5-card draw. I like how he beat Annabelle when he only had 6s and she was bluffing.
Oh, yeah, because his whole thing is, I want to know if I'm the best player. You were the best player there. Even the TV miniseries, The Gambler, didn't do 5 cards. It wasn't until The Gambler was really bad, like 3 and 4, did they do the 5-card stud where you didn't even get to throw away cards. I think he got a royal flush there, too. And that's completely ludicrous. It takes so much away from this. And in my opinion, what it does is this whole idea of this poker game is the MacGuffin of the movie. And what they try to do is to raise the MacGuffin into something more dramatic and poignant. And it's not. It's absolutely crazy.
If this was 10 years later, you're in the Texas Hold'em craze of the mid 2000s, I think you could play it off better there because you have the way the game is played. I try to reason after watching. I'm like, maybe the dealer knew that the top card might have had that spade that he needed at the end to complete the royal flush because he knows the cards that he's dealing out. You could see a little bit on the face of the dealer that he looks a little worried himself when things are going down. And the Commodore later mentions that he didn't know about Angel and the dealer having their own little thing going on. But at the end, it's stupid. It does frustrate me. I'm happy that we get 10 more minutes of this film, take our minds off of that, because if this is how the movie ended, I would probably even lower it even more.
You're right. Mercifully, that's not the end of the movie. After it's done, the game goes back to what it originally was in the movie, the MacGuffin of the movie. It's not supposed to be something that's supposed to be this grandiose thing. It's the thing that moves the plot along to get us to the end. They totally take this whole thing and make it 10 times bigger than what it even should have. If you wanted to make him the best player, just have him just sit there and screw around like he did for an hour, and then he just takes everybody down by using their towels. That would have been much more entertaining than sitting there and have him do his little hand wavy thing over the card and then magically it's an ace of spades.
They tried to recreate The Sting where you have 2 people with 4 of a kind,
right?
At the end. And the difference on that is both of them are conning each other. Paul Newman's character knows that he likes to play with 8s,
right.
8s or 9s, and he ends up with 4 jacks. So they're trying to recreate that, and the problem is it's not the same. It doesn't come off being authentic at the end, whereas in The Sting it works perfectly because it's the con. Whereas here you do have that cheating from the dealer, but it's not the same thing. Maverick was in on the con, knew that this was going to happen beforehand and knew how to out con them, then that would have been different. It's like, you're right, the fact that he's hovering over that card, and I know they try to set this up earlier, and we knew this is how it's going to end at the end.
Of course.
This is where I'm total agreement with you, because of the fact the whole movie, he wants to prove that he's the best around. This proves that you're the luckiest person on the face of the planet, and that's not what you want to be remembered for. You want to be remembered for how you outplayed somebody, how you outwitted somebody, how you out-strategized somebody for, and that's what his characters wanted throughout the whole movie, and it doesn't pay off. So thank goodness it doesn't end this way. Thank goodness that you have Hoop take the money because he's in on this con, and that's another one that's kind kind of a little weird. Coop takes the money, steals it from Maverick, and everybody that's in the boat gets away. I'm assuming here that Brett and Coop were in it all along because they're father and son, and they had this all planned. But the way things played out, Coop and the Commodore get together at the end. Coop's mad at Commodore because he was in it with Angel, and Commodore was like, well, Angel was in it with the dealer, and it just didn't seem like the plan was really well thought out. And then Maverick shows up. He's got a gun. He throws a gun up in the air for them both to fight it out, and then we find out the gun is not even loaded. And then Coop getting ready to almost like bash the Commodore in with a big log, and then doesn't, and then basically shows up where Maverick's taking a bath. When he threw up the gun in the air, did Coop know that the gun was not loaded and that the Commodore would get it and then know that it was blank to give him time to hit him with the log? Things just didn't kind of line up for me at the end there. I don't have a big problem with it, but at the same time, it was just kind of all rushed at the end to try to tie it up in a bow.
No, you're right. It's all convoluted. Almost hard to keep track of who's trying to mess around or screw who. Why does Coop even take the money other than to, I guess, keep the ruse on with the Commodore? But his son just won the money. At that point, you really don't even need to steal the money at that point.
Unless, like you said, the Commodore then goes, well, what happened to our little plan? And Annabelle shows up. Somehow she figures out where they're at. She's bought him a shirt already. Some of the stuff at the end, like I said, it's rushed. Doesn't make sense, but at the same time, I'm okay with it because it's lighthearted and they're having fun with it at the end still.
In the end, what you talk about with her stealing, we know she's going to go to New Orleans. And this brings up one of my last question about the plot point. Where exactly is this supposed to take place? Because we're in the West. We discussed how the scenery is completely amazing. Brett mentions that it's supposed to take place in St. Louis, meaning St. Louis. I guess we're supposed to think that they're on the Mississippi.
Yeah, I guess
Yes,
so.
I think so.
Okay, so at no point does it look like that they're ever even close to St. Louis. St. Louis at that point in time is not a Wild West town by any stretch of the imagination. It was the gateway of the West at that point. And if they're tossing people into the Mississippi, all of a
They're
sudden,
going to drown.
all of a sudden, the jokes of them tossing people overboard, it's not really funny. I grew up on the Mississippi. There's no playing in the Mississippi. If you're getting tossed out into the middle of the Mississippi, you're dead. The undercurrent in the Mississippi is ridiculous, especially when it gets to the point down by St. Louis. I actually did a deep dive into
No pun
how fast
intended.
exactly how fast the Mississippi normally flows. When it's at regular height and not at flood stage or drought stage. At St. Louis, the current is about 20 miles an hour. That is extremely fast water.
Yeah, but your typical person's not going to relate that.
That goes to my point. None of these places look like, one, the Mississippi, two, any of the places that they're supposed to be close around. Even if they're on the Mississippi for a whole day, that's kind of what we're anticipating because they play for like 24 hours. They should be somewhere further south than Memphis. That would be one of the closest southern cities on the Mississippi. They wouldn't have made it as far as Vicksburg, I don't think.
Well, he always talks about her southern accent, so I almost feel like this is not in the South.
Well, she references that she grew up in Mobile,
Right.
which is in Alabama, and then she says she's going to New Orleans, which, if they're on the Mississippi, that makes sense that they would track her down to New Orleans to get the thing. It's just an inconsistency that just...
They're not very specific about where they're at, like you had said. But at the same time, you do want certain things to kind of line up.
I mean, if you're going to stay in the West, there are big rivers in the West. You have the Colorado and you have the Missouri. Those rivers are big rivers. No, they're not the Mississippi. Those are significant rivers that definitely could have handled riverboat traffic during the time. It didn't have to be in St. Louis. And when you grow up on the Mississippi, as far as putting your feet in, you're told as a kid you don't go very far out. Eric, I think one of the things that we're going to agree on the most for our last point is the score of the movie.
I think so. Let's talk about that score. Are we talking about Randy Newman or are we talking about every country artist of 1994?
Let's tackle Mr. Randy Newman to start with.
Randy Newman, honestly, I know he's like Mr. Musical Score when it comes to movies.
Mr. Toy Story.
Mr. Toy Stories, big in the 70s with a few songs. I'm not a huge Randy Newman fan. I think his scores are pretty predictable. I put Randy Newman in the category of the Dave Matthews Band, where all his music sounds alike. So you can pick out a Randy Newman score real easily if you know what you're listening for.
I love the comparison to the
Yeah.
Dave Matthews Band. You're exactly right. This is a movie that I have completely forgotten about until we watched this week leading up to doing the podcast. The moment the first notes hit for the movie, I'm like, oh my God,
It's Randy Newman.
It's Randy Newman. He has a very distinct tonal pattern to his music. While mercifully, it's not as
He's not singing, at least.
well, yeah, he's not singing.
He's not talking about short people.
It doesn't play where the score has to predict the action on screen. That god awful song that he wrote for the closing credits is horrible.
It is.
Run Gambler Run, I think is what it's
Yep,
called.
that's
it. It's garbage. The best part of his score, I think, is probably the chase scene in the stagecoach.
Mhm.
But even that sounds Randy Newman. It's very upbeat, boopity.
It's hard to put into words, but if you know Randy Newman's music, you can pull it out anywhere. You're like, yep.
I automatically thought we were watching Toy Story.
I did enjoy it when they were doing the stage fight. That sounded good.
At least the music, as Maverick connected with a punch, it didn't. That's a major plus, considering a couple of the movies that we've reviewed that did that and how annoying that particular thing is.
I thought it changed up a little bit when they got to the riverboat, when they're in.
That's the other part of the music of the movie. Then, like Eric said, and my wife brought this up, it's kind of odd. You have an Old West movie that has modern country in it. I understand the Waylon Jennings song, and Waylon Jennings should probably have a song in every movie. Waylon Jennings is awesome. But Tracy Lawrence's Renegades and Rogues, probably not so much. It took me out of the movie quite a bit. I don't know. What did you think, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of expected it. When I saw Clint Black, I'm like, okay, yeah. And I knew the soundtrack. Good Run of Bad Luck came out. That was a huge hit for Clint Black. When he saw the video back when, there were videos out there, CMT and stuff, it was all movie scenes. When you knew he was in it, I kind of knew that it was going to be a run of modern 90s country in it.
At least it didn't have Billy Ray Cyrus in it.
Yeah, Cyrus was a little earlier. He was like 90, 91.
Oh, I know.
Breaky, but yeah,
I know.
His star kind of fizzled a little bit by this. I'm surprised he didn't have like a Garth Brooks in it though.
You know who would have fit would have been Brooks and Dunn.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The 90s as to country music as the 80s was to rock music with the videos. So in the 90s, country videos were on the rise and the rock videos were on the decline. And so this is a great promotional thing for the movie. I mean, they made a video of Amazing Grace with all these stars.
Yeah, and that's a whole different thing. That was actually pretty cool.
It's like We Are the World for country.
Exactly. Yeah. For country music artists. I saw Tracy Lawrence in concert.
So did I.
In the late 90s.
I saw him at the Holiday Star Theater in Maryville.
Saw him at the Adams County Fair.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I saw him at Walmart.
Yeah, right. You probably did.
Yeah, when he was playing at the Adams County Fair, it's after he'd been to rehab for alcohol.
Okay.
Don't mark me on that, but I'm pretty sure. The highlighting of Clint Black. I know there's a lot of people who really like Clint Black. He played in Quincy where I grew up. I'll tell you my Clint Black story.
Where did he touch you?
He never touched me, mercifully.
You could do worse.
So sometimes when stars would come to St. Louis, they would stop by every now and then in Quincy and play at the racetrack. But Clint Black did, and it's a dirt track, so it had rained, and they couldn't get his bus close enough to where he needed to walk in because it was all mud, and he wouldn't come out of his bus. He didn't want to get his ostrich boots muddy as he walked to the stage. They had to go to a lumber yard and get sheets of wood put down so he could walk to the stage before he had come out of his bus. Kind of a bag. And anytime I see anything with Clint Black, it always reminds me of that. It was cool to see Waylon Jennings because, like I said, I grew up with a house full of country music. My mom's family was huge country music. I grew up, of course, then with the 90s country, and a lot of that is schlock. Later in life, I've come to learn to love the outlaw country. Merle Haggard and Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash. That's my country.
Ken, what did you think of the music? I know you're not a big country fan.
I'm not huge into country music.
Ken listens to both kinds of music, country and
Western.
western.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's the second time you said that in this podcast.
Yeah, it's because the Blues Brothers is awesome, and that's what we should be talking about instead of Maverick.
That's for a different podcast on a different day. It didn't bother me. In fact, I thought he took a lower key than he does, let's say, in his more recent movies that he's scored, especially when it comes to Toy Story movies and things of that nature. I thought it was fine. I thought he did do a great job, but I didn't think he did a bad job. I think it was there.
Okay.
The movie's written by William
Yes.
Goldman, and we had done for The Princess Bride. I don't know what you guys' thoughts about William Goldman.
I don't have any.
Not really. You mean the writing of this movie in general, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even, in my opinion, it's not even close to The Princess Bride.
No, not at all.
You can't. The Princess Bride is an original movie, if you will. This is taking a 60s Western TV show and using that as your backdrop and your basis and then writing. No, it's apples and oranges.
The actors help bring it up because of their performances. Donner is doing a good job with the direction here because I do think the script that he has is basically average. So I think Donner does a great job with the directing. I do think the actors do a great job with the acting and help this be a better movie, where this could be, for me at least, the actors elevate this movie to the point of just an enjoyable movie.
Yeah, I have to agree with a lot of what you said. And of course, like you had said too, Eric, The Princess Bride is an original work. You do kind of get some of William Goldman's sense of humor at certain places.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff with Joseph is kind of very reminiscent of a William Goldman type of comedy. I think that works really well. That's, I think, why that section is probably, like I said, like in my opinion, the best section in the movie. He has to keep a lot of the stuff from the TV show from the 60s. He's kind of limited in what he could do.
True.
And that might come from Donner because Donner is a fan of the series and wants to keep it that way. Well, I mean, when you bring James Garner to be part of your Maverick movie, you basically need to follow that Maverick blueprint. Jack Kelly, who played the other Maverick on the TV show, was actually considered to be in this too, but he had died just before filming.
That would make it hard for him to be in the
Very
movie.
hard,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there was a scene where they ran over a bunch of coffins. So, I never know. But
Wow.
wow, I know.
Wow.
Too soon.
Maverick just took a dark turn.
All right, well, let's talk about our final thoughts and reviews of this movie. We'll start out with Ken. What do you got, Ken?
I enjoy this movie. It's fun. The poker is stupid at the end. I think the poker's okay at the beginning when they're first are playing poker, when he first is introduced to the other characters in the film. I kind of enjoy that, but the tournament at the end is frustrating, to say the least. But Mel Gibson is at height of his Mel Gibson powers as far as his acting, his timing. He's just being Mel Gibson here in 1994. This is what you expect out of him, and he does a real good job. I already talked enough about Jodie Foster, about how much I enjoyed her in this film. James Garner, of course, is doing a great job, as he always does. So the actors really elevate this piece. Like I said just a few moments ago, the writing is average, but Richard Donner does a good job of getting what he needs from his actors and from the source material. And Ted talked about this earlier, the scenery. It's shot very well. This is a movie not to take seriously. It's a comedy. Cameos, they're fun. I do like the Glover cameo. I think it's enjoyable. This is just kind of the way the Donner is. I think he likes to have a fun set. And in this particular movie, he just happened to say, hey, everybody come on down and let's have just a good time with this. And I think it works. For me, this movie is a B+. Might have made an A- if it wasn't for the Ace of Spades popping up at the end. That just drives me nuts. It's a little bit better than The Goonies, so I didn't want to give it a B because I gave The Goonies a B. It's falling in that B+ range, but it is close to falling down to a B. But I'm just going to keep it right now at a B+.
Cool. Thanks, Ken. What are your thoughts, Ted?
When I approached the movie, I approached it like it was going to be a Western. I get it that it is a comedy. I don't care for those 50s and 60s Western style TV shows. They've never interested me. And this falls in there. So I guess some of the comedy is lost on me. And when I want to watch a Western, I can name 6 or 7 Westerns off the top of my head that I would prefer to watch. From Tombstone to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly to The Wild Bunch. That's what I think of when I watch a Western. I don't think of this. parts of it do hit. The cinematography is really good in this movie. It's amazing. Some of the scenes they're breathtaking. The writing with Joseph, it's done in a way that it's not demeaning, whereas a lot of jokey westerns are very demeaning to the Indians and don't treat them with any respect, whereas this treats Joseph definitely as an equal to Maverick and maybe even a step above, because he's pulling off an even bigger ruse than what anything Maverick has done. I appreciate that part. The whole card playing scene is as amateur as it possibly could be. It's the gambler and bad TV Western card playing scenes. Seeing some of the older actors, if it wasn't so persistent, it is kind of cool. The cameos, as far as the modern day actors, is like Danny Glover. It didn't do anything for me. It actually took me out. This isn't Maverick meets Lethal Weapon. I didn't need it. Is it enjoyable? I guess at the end of the day, I kind of enjoyed it. I'm not going to sit there and say that I thoroughly enjoyed the movie from beginning to end every time I watched it. By the fourth time, it was begrudgingly watching it, to say the least. I still laughed at the Joseph jokes. I thought that those were still funny. As far as going back and watching the movie again, I probably won't, because it's not my type of a thing. If I want to watch a comedy that's based off of a Western, I'll turn on Blazing Saddles, which is, in my opinion, more intelligent. I'm going to give this movie a D+. It's not my movie. It's obviously Ken's movie. He thoroughly enjoys it. It did find a huge audience because it made $183 million. And I'm sure it's found its niche when videos were a thing and then into Blu-ray. It's not my kind of movie. And I think at the end of the day, that's where I have to stand.
All right. D+. Wow. I didn't think you were going to go that low. You surprised me. I think Maverick is pretty much the type of movie, what you see is what you get. Don't read into it. Don't overthink it. Just watch it and enjoy it. If you like the characters, if you like the plot, if you like Westerns, if you like the type of humor that is in this movie, if you like some of the cameos and you just take it for a grain of salt of what it is and just sit down and watch it, it is an enjoyable movie. Is it a great movie? By no stretch, no. Is it a bad movie? No. It's pretty much an average movie in my book. It's a fun comedy. It's a little bit of an adventure. It's got some decent writing. The cinematography is incredible. Of course, I know I've beat this into the hole. 75 million it better be. I don't think they did any shortcuts or cut any corners in making the movie. And I think the actors they used are great. I love Mel Gibson. I think this is one of Jodie Foster's most likable roles. She's obviously more of a serious actress, and I thought she was very likable, very kind of fluffy, if you will. She does the part, and James Garner, of course, the original Brett Maverick, he did great. It's a good cast. I enjoyed the movie. Would I watch it again? I probably would, but it's not going to be a movie that I'm going to pull off the shelf and watch. It's not going to be a movie that I'm going to go out of my way to find. So for me, I'm going to split the difference with you guys, and I'm going to give this one a solid C for average.
Something I don't know if I mentioned earlier, we were talking about Brett and Bert and how Annabelle keeps on saying the wrong name.
Yes.
That's an homage to the TV show as well.
Yes.
There's an episode where he kind of repeats that name over and over again. And actually, in one of the scenes where he catches up to the guys who stole the money from the missionaries, one of the bad guys at the fire camp, he mentions his brother's name, Bart, from the original TV series. More interesting fact. The fact that I love the TV show is probably why I love this movie as well, and vice versa.
Still not funny.
All right. Well, we have a do not like, a really, really like, and an okay when it comes to all three of us here. Well, that is our review of Maverick. Ken, what's next on the list here?
Next movie we're going to do is Assassins with Sylvester Stallone and Antonio Banderas.
Totally different type of Richard Donner movie here. Well, Ted, where can everyone out there find us on the old World Wide Web?
We are on Twitter at the movie_marquee.
And what about on wherever else we are, Ken?
You can catch us at the Movie Marquee on Facebook. We have a little community going on right now. In fact, we post some questions. So our last episode was on The Omen. So one of the questions that we posted out was, what scary movie from your childhood is something that you still love? Here are some responses real quick. Chad said The Exorcist and Jaws. I've never thought Jaws as a horror film, but it is kind of a thriller at least. Sherry said the only scary movie that I really liked as a kid was The Lost Boys. She's like, I should watch it again as an adult to see if I still like it. Tom said Creep Show, and Jennifer, not Eric's Jennifer, a different Jennifer, said It. And I know Eric is not a huge fan of the movie It.
That's
But
true. If you're
so
looking
those are
for 2
some
hours of your life that you never want to get back, go ahead and watch it.
So those are some responses that we got from our Facebook community regarding that question. So come on board. The questions are not just from us. The questions can be from you. We want to build this community up and have fun with movies because we love to talk about movies. You could also reach us by email, themoviemarquee@gmail.com.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode, folks. Appreciate you listening, and we will see you next time.
See you at the movies.
Thank you for stopping by at the Movie Marquee.